As most of you know, PANA has campaigned against the process since our foundation in 1996, against the process by which Irish independence, Irish democracy and Irish neutrality was being destroyed, as this state was essentially integrated into the US, EU, NATO military structures. PANA advocated Ireland should have its own independent foreign policy, a key component of which would be the restoration of the policy of Irish neutrality. We advocated the EU should be a partnership of independent democratic states, legal equals, without a military dimension. We imposed the Lisbon Treaty because it accelerated this process of militarisation, and it's attached to an outline of it is attached to this press statement. Now, of course, we didn't nick those kind of values in favour of independence, democracy, and neutrality off the stones. There was a booklet published on our 10th anniversary, which was a reprint of a document published in 1790 at a time of a potential war between the British Union and the Spanish Empire about a resource war in the Pacific. And he argued in favour of Irish neutrality. So it's a very deeply rooted value, continued on by the Ireland and the Phoenix. And as we know, this year marks the 90th anniversary of the foundation of the Irish Republic. But of course, there's always been people in favour of imperialism. For example, Daniel O'Connell supported the Opium War, which you could say was in the 1830s, and but supported the Crimean War. I think 9,000 people died in that war, and then of course the mass slaughter of the 1914-18 war. So obviously the Union is now kind of a shadow of its former self, not quite the empire that it used to be. And I think that allegiance of those kind of people has been transferred over to this emerging European superstate. That whole process of the development of the militarization of Europe is the opposite side of the coin of the wars in Iraq and Palestine and Afghanistan. And it's just all part of the same problem. And it was those wars that started off this major economic crisis. So as far as PANA is concerned, the great economic crisis we're all facing now is part of all these wars. They're part of the same problem. And it's only by solving those wars and is a key component of the solution of our economic problems. Now we believe, from contacts we've built up with peace movements all over Europe, that in opposing this Lisbon Treaty, we're reflecting the views not just of the Irish people, but of the vast majority of peoples all over Europe, which is precisely, of course, why they weren't allowed to vote on the Lisbon Treaty. However, I'll conclude by saying that it's quite clear that this particular election on the 5th of October has not been about the Lisbon Treaty. It's been about this government and the credibility of this government. We're calling for the issue of militarisation, if you like, to be part of that debate, because Fianna Fáil were the key advocates of that process of militarisation and the key supporters of the use of Shannon in the war on Iraq and Afghanistan. We believe that their defeat will be a great victory for those of us who believe in peace and democracy and independence. So I think the first person I'll ask to speak now is Patricia McKenna.
Thanks very much, Roger. I'd just like to congratulate the panel for keeping this issue to the fore and the public's attention drawn to it. I think one of the key issues in this campaign, I think, is that Ireland desperately needs independent voices in Brussels to speak out on issues like this. It's clear the Irish government are participating in the further militarisation of Europe, but also in other areas around the world. They're still facilitating the US rendition of Shannon. And I just want to focus on those two aspects this morning. First of all, in relation to the European Defence Agency, recently the Minister for the Environment, John Gormley, said that Ireland should opt out of this defence agency. Now, I think that was a clear acknowledgement of recognition that at least one government party, feels that Ireland's participation in this agency does pose major problems for a neutral country. Although the proposal seems to have been dropped since Fianna Fáil, like a hot potato since Fianna Fáil don't seem to be going along with it. But Ireland's participation in the Defence Agency was done without any Dáil debate, without any Dáil discussion, without any vote, without any mandate from the government. We are participating in the European Defence Agency without any legitimate mandate from the people of this country. And I feel it's important that this issue is pursued and that Ireland opts out of it. At least it would send a signal to other countries in Europe that we are maintaining and would give us back some credibility as a neutral nation. The second issue I think that's very important, and while it is related to the EU, it's also related to the US, in that we are still facilitating the practice of rendition. The programme for government made a firm commitment, and I'm just going to read from it. It said that rendition, that the government would guarantee that rendition does not occur in this state in any form. And it said the government will encourage and support An Garda Síochána in the investigation and enforcement of the laws pertaining to this issue. Since this new government came into power, not one single plane has been searched at Shannon. Even members of the minister's own party, Minister Gormley's own party, have been arrested for asking the Gardaí to carry out the promise made in the programme for government. Amnesty International have been extremely critical of the fact that the programme for government commitment to ensure that rendition does not take place has not been met. And I think it's appalling that ordinary citizens in this country have to go to court and fight in court because they actually asked the Garda Síochána to follow through on a commitment that the government itself made. The European Union has issued in 2007, there was a very good report that showed that Ireland was one of the member states in the EU participating in this illegal activity. Yet, since this whole issue came to light, nothing has been done, and the reason nothing has been done is that governments like Ireland are getting off the hook because the representation in Europe is not pursuing the issue as vigorously as it should. I think our credibility as a country that supported human rights and opposed any kind of human rights abuse and opposed the kind of militarisation and that has been pursued by the US has been lost because we have not basically lived up to our tradition. So just on those two issues alone, I think it highlights the need to have people in Europe that are going to hold the government in this country to account for its promises in particular, and also for its support for the EU military project. Thanks.